In this video, I'm going to be talking about musical intervals. So in music, an interval is just the distance between any two notes. It can't be more, can't be less, it needs to be exactly two notes. So, and when dealing with intervals, there are two different parts to the interval. There is the type of interval that it is, and there's the distance of the interval. First up, we'll talk about the distance. This is probably the easier part to wrap your head around. So to find the distance, you simply count the lines and the spaces between the two notes you have. So this first one here, and you got to include the line and space that the final and starting note are both on. So in this first one here, we have that space, the D space that the first note's on. We have the E line, and then we have the F space. So that would be 3. So that would be a third interval. Next up, we have the D again, then we have an E, F, and then we are on the G line, so that will be a fourth. And then this last one here, we have that F space, and then the G line, so that's 2, so it'll be a second interval. Once you have the distances down, we're going to move on to the types. However, if you need more practice with distances, take that time and do that, because if you don't understand how to do the distances, the types will be difficult for you. So there are 5 types of intervals. There are a major, minor, perfect, augmented, and diminished. Now, as you can see, they all have shorthands written next to them. So the major has a capital M, the minor has a little m, perfect has a capital P, augmented has a capital A or a plus sign, and diminished has dim or a degree symbol there. So here we have the C major scale with different intervals. Something I forgot to mention is the first isn't actually called a first, it's called a unison, and that's when you have two of the same note. And then instead of an eighth, you have an octave, and the octave is just when you have the same like the same note, but it's just higher up in the music. So when dealing with those, the unison, fourth, fifth, and octave are all perfect. It's just what they're called in music. And the second, third, sixth, and seventh are all major. Keep in mind this is for the C major scale. If you're dealing with a minor scale, the unison, fourth, fifth, and octave all remain perfect, and the second will remain major. However, the third, sixth, and seventh become minor. So when you're trying to make a minor interval, you start with the major interval you have, and you simply just decrease it by a half step. So we take our major third that we have here, we add a flat, and that becomes a minor third interval. You could accomplish the same thing by adding a sharp to the C at the bottom, and that would also make that a minor interval. So, and then when you want to make a diminished interval, you could take a minor or a perfect interval. The reason you can take a perfect interval is because there is no minor form of a perfect interval. There's diminished, perfect, or augmented. There's no minor. So if you take a perfect interval and decrease it by a half step, that will just become diminished. So you don't need to do it twice. However, when you're dealing with the minor interval we have here, if you want to make it diminish, you just decrease it by another half step. So here I made that into a double flat instead of a single flat. You could accomplish the same thing by having a flat there and a sharp at the C, or a double sharp in the C, and anything to just decrease it by 2 half steps. And then when you want to make an augmented interval, you take a major or a perfect interval, and you add a half step. So we take this interval, the major third, we make that note a sharp, and then that becomes an augmented interval. You could accomplish the same thing by making that a C flat down at the bottom instead of making that E sharp. However, I prefer just in the top note instead of the tonic note. That's just personal preference though. Alright, that's everything for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and that you found it useful.